Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
Okay, we're tying a very popular fly pattern tonight, or a variation of it. It's called the Purple Haze. Everybody's has seen it. We actually even did a video of it before. So, this one's going to be a tactical version, though. You can see I've got a really fine wire barbless hook in the vise. It's a Fulling Mill Ultimate Dry Fly hook. And we're just going to build it so that it maybe is a little bit more sparse, a little thinner, and maybe a little bit more low profile in the harsh colors, other than purple. Anyway, I've got Montana Fly 8/0 thread in purple, and I really like this thread for tying dry flies, especially parachutes, where every thread wrap matters. Anyway, you just dress the hook shank. One of the main differences here is instead of using normal moose or elk or hackle fibers, I'm going to use some speckled moose mane from Nature's Spirit. I think this is a dun color, so you can see how it's kind of speckly. Fibers are different colors a little bit. But anyway, instead of having a really dark tail, this one's kind of more of a naturally gray color type thing. So I'm just going to get a few of these fibers, about that many, and I have this little mini hair stacker from Renzetti, and it's a really cool tool for stacking small clumps of hair like this, or for like a comparadun. So once those are all stacked, I'm just going to take these out of the stacker, and that tail is going to be roughly the length of the body. You can see it's a pretty sparse tail. So with loose wraps, I'm just going to capture those and wrap them all the way forward, and you can see that that moose doesn't want to flare if I do it that way. It might flare a little bit by the time the fly is done, but it's not a big deal. Okay, now I'm going to tie on the post. Now, instead of using like white poly yarn, I'm going to use some EP Trigger Point International fiber. So this is like a mixture of gray. This is a Quicksilver. I've used this color on a bunch of other flies, but it kind of breaks up a little bit better than the white. Okay, so I've separated a clump of hair, or of fibers. I'm going to find that position on the hook where I want that parachute hackle to be, which is about right there. And you notice that I just tied that on parallel to the hook shank. Some people kind of come up under, but if you just tie that right on top, it creates a lot less bulk underneath the fly. So now, instead of dealing with this big, huge chunk, I'm just going to trim it off. And I do trim it a little bit long just so that it's easier to deal with. So several wraps in front, and now I'll wrap up the parachute post. Right about like that. And so with thread wraps, I'm just going to kind of crisscross underneath that a little bit to lock it in place so it doesn't spin. Okay, now for the body, I use just Uniflex. This is a Spanflex type material. I like this color of purple. It's kind of a toned down purple. It's not as bright and neon as some others. So to tie this in, I'm going to take a clump of it, or a portion of that, and I'm going to leave it hanging out in front of that parachute, and get that tied in and pull it really tight and wrap backward to where the tail is. and then back up to the front. Now the reason I did that with that section coming out the front is now I can come in here and I can pull that, stretch it out, trim it, and it just sucks back in there and you can't see where we tied that in. Okay, so at this point we'll wrap the body. So pulling that tight, we're going to wrap the body. I don't put much taper in this particular version. You can make them a little fatter toward the front if you want. So I'll just tie that off with a couple wraps on top and then in front. And then I'm going to cut that one off the same way. So here our body is built, ready for some hackle. Now, I gauged the hackle with my Whiting hackle gauge, which is a really cool tool. The only thing that I found is hard to pick up off the table. I don't like it on the stem of my vise, so I just put some really heavy monofilament through it so I can just hold it on my finger like that. It's a cool tool. So I've sized out some hackles that are, and this is a size 12, and I've sized out some hackles that are right in between a 12 and a 14. So a little bit on the smaller side. Okay, so I've trimmed off or pulled off some of the fluffy stuff. Instead of using a grizzly and a brown, I'm going to use a grizzly and a barred dark ginger, whatever you call it. Okay, with these hackles, the shiny side is facing me now, and I'm just going to kind of jam those in here so that my stems go all the way to the top of the parachute post. And I'm going to just take my thread and wrap those in place with a couple wraps, then pull those directly upward. So those were loose wraps. And so you can see I've just got them lashed a little bit. And now I'm wrapping up the parachute post. And now back down. And now what I'll do is I'll trim those, but not all the way flush. You can see there's little nubs there. With those nubs, I'm going to wrap those forward toward the eye. So that really secures that hackle in there. Okay. So at this point, we'll add some dubbing. And I have a blend of just some purple Nature Spirit fine natural dubbing and some ice dub. So just a little pinch of ice dub in there. And it kind of gives a little sparkle, but not too much. So just dub on a really thin noodle of that. And we're just going to kind of crisscross underneath the fly. Now, there's my thorax. That's as thick as I want it to be. Now, when I end this thread, I'm going to wrap that around the parachute post a couple times and let it hang on the bottom side. And that's critical at this point because of the way we're going to tie this fly off. So I'm going to grab both of these feathers and I'm going to kind of pull them down against where they were tied in. What that does is it puts a crease in the stem of the feather so that when I start wrapping, now they're going to both be facing the same direction. Let me see if I can do that again without trying to show you on the camera. So these are both wrapping the same direction. And now what you do is you're going to take this and you're going to put one wrap under the previous wrap. And again, this is going to be a kind of a more sparse fly. So I'm just going to do about 3 wraps. So you can see the bottom looks like that. So that's my 3rd wrap. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to go underneath the wrapped hackle, but on top of the excess hackle I'm holding in my hand. And I'm just going to do 2 snug wraps there. And my hackle's tied off. I can let go of those. At this point, I can come up in here with my really sharp scissors. And I've trimmed off the excess. So that's the bottom side of the fly. There are no stragglers You can't even tell where I cut that off. Okay, so this is the part where most people will kind of destroy a good parachute. They're trying to put a whip finish on it and preen all the fibers up and bend them all up. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take super glue, and we've showed this technique before. I've got Wapsi Z-Mint, and it's really, really good stuff. It's a really good consistency, not too thick, not too thin. And I'm just going to load some of that up on my bodkin. And as you can see, let's see if I can show you. There's barely any on there. You can't really see it because this black bodkin. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come and shove this right behind that parachute post and rub that glue in right there. Just let that sit for just a second. And once you have it glued, you can just come in here with your scissors and trim it off. So I've never had one of these unravel because I use the super glue technique. Now the parachute post is all up to you. So you can either cut it flush or you can kind of cut it at an angle. I think this one I will cut at an angle just to kind of show that technique. So I'm going to kind of just smash it out flat a little bit. So you can see right there, it kind of gives that a mayfly looking wing profile. Anyway, that's the tactical Purple Haze. Give them a try and fish them where you got some picky eaters. Oh yeah, also tie them in different colors. Anyway, you can get all this stuff at store.flyfishfood.com.
Yeah.